This is Cyprus. Located in the eastern Mediterranean between Turkey and Lebanon, the island has long been home to both Greek and Turkish populations living in harmony for centuries. In the 1960s, however, this island saw a tragic turning point, not only in its own history, but that of the entire Mediterranean. This is a story of conflict, nationalism, and the tragic divisions they wrought. It's the story of a faithless priest and the people he harmed. This is the story of an island divided. In 1570, the Ottoman Empire conquered the island of Cyprus from Venice, becoming the next in a long string of colonial rulers. Over the next 300 years, thousands of Ottoman Turks would settle on the island, establishing ethnic enclaves nestled inside of Greek-majority cities. The Turks developed largely independently of their Greek neighbors, but positive relations were mostly maintained. After the 1878 Russo-Turkish War, the weakened Ottoman Empire decided to cede Cyprus to their British allies. However, the Turks who had settled there were hesitant to leave. Their families had lived on the island for centuries, and they were as much a part of the local community as the island's Greek inhabitants, and therefore opted to remain. According to all accounts, the state of harmony between the two populations persisted. However, in the aftermath of World War I, Greek nationalism began to take hold, with Greek premier Eleftherios Venizelos' promotion of what he referred to as the Megali idea, uniting all Greeks under a single state. Venizelos thus sent the army to capture Western Anatolia, an area regarded by nationalists as rightfully Greek, but the region's Turkish majority rose up against the occupation, taking back Anatolia by 1923. On the island of Cyprus, the conflict inflamed nationalist sentiments on both sides. In 1948, King Paul of Greece announced his support for unification with Cyprus, or Enosis. The nationalist Cypriot Orthodox Church responded by holding a referendum. Only Christians were allowed to take part, with Turks excluded from the process. Hence, it returned a questionable figure of 96% in favor. While clearly flawed, it nonetheless inflamed nationalist sentiments. By the 1950s, the situation had devolved, and the once peaceful island became a center for daily protests and clashes.
As rioting becomes daily more widespread on Cyprus, young people of high school age take an increasing part in the violence. Here, a group of girls are being dispersed after a rock-throwing battle with British military police. Only after the use of tear gas is the demonstration broken up. The soldiers, carrying plastic shields against stones, pursue the demonstrators. In addition to clashes with rebelling Greek Cypriots, the British are faced with keeping the peace between the Turkish and Greek factions, each of which is seeking union of the island with its own country. One British Army truck is bombed, killing 2 soldiers and wounding 12. Diplomats vainly seek a solution to the Cyprus impasse, but the strategic island continues to be the scene of daily violence and bloodshed.
Fearing that the conflict could threaten regional stability, Britain sought a peaceful resolution. It called for a conference of both populations, with the exiled Archbishop Makarios, head of the Cypriot Orthodox Church, representing the Greeks, and the activist Fazıl Küçük, representing the Turks, with the goal of reaching a compromise.
London's Greek and Cypriot community cheers Archbishop Makarios as he attends church, following word that his exile from Cyprus has been ended. Another step following the agreement on the independence of Cyprus toward soothing the scars that still remain after the long crisis over the Mediterranean island, British-owned with largely Greek and Turkish population. Now Britain, Turkey and Greece join Cyprus itself in rejoicing over the end to a reign of bitterness and terror. The Archbishop was a leader of the nationalists whose claim for enosis, union with Greece, has been relinquished. An angry quarrel that disrupted NATO's southeastern flank has been settled in one of the outstanding political achievements of recent years.
Independence was agreed upon only after extensive guarantees for each of the populations. From the time of Cypriot independence in 1960 until 1963, Cyprus was ruled as a bicommunal republic. The president was to be a Greek. Immediately after independence, Archbishop Makarios was elected to this post. The Turks were guaranteed the vice presidency along with selective veto powers. For a few years, it appears as if this model might succeed in bringing stability to the island, but it soon became apparent that this new system faced destruction by its own architect, Archbishop Makarios.
The original Cyprus constitution, which was part of the independence of Cyprus negotiated with the British colonial power in 1960, had been a disastrous failure, mainly because the leader of the Greek Cypriot community, Archbishop Makarios, president of Cyprus, didn't basically honor the constitution and didn't give the Turkish Cypriots a proper share in taking decisions, and indeed basically tried to maneuver them into a position where they were more and more marginalized.
In 1963, Archbishop Makarios proposed 13 constitutional amendments to the Parliament of Cyprus, including the abolition of the Turkish vice president's veto power. Makarios knew that his proposals would never gain the support of the Turks. Rather, the amendments were a clever ploy. Predicting the Turks' negative reactions, Makarios sought to erode their faith in the new government and thereby discourage their participation in its institutions. Meanwhile, far-right paramilitaries led by the convicted murderer Nikos Samson took Makarios' fight to the streets. On Christmas Eve of 1963, Samson's men attacked Turks throughout the island, destroying more than 100 Turkish villages in what became known as Bloody Christmas. Under both political and military pressure, the vice president resigned from his post, playing right into the archbishop's hands. By May of 1964, Turks in every branch of the government followed suit, clearing the way for the next step of Makarios' plan. With the Turkish offices vacant, the archbishop passed his 13 amendments with little resistance. Makarios and his allies took full control of the Cypriot government and proceeded to ensure that no amount of resistance from the Turks could disrupt their control. They refused to let the Turks retake their seats in parliament. They blockaded the Turks in their enclaves.
Until 1974, we basically lived in these open-air ghettos. Early on in the conflict, the siege was very tight. No food, nothing was allowed.
Living conditions became unbearable, but the archbishop had accomplished his goal: full control for the Greeks, with the Turks effectively neutralized. In July 1974, Greece's ruling military junta attempted to bolster its waning domestic legitimacy by orchestrating a coup in Cyprus, replacing Archbishop Makarios with the aforementioned Nikos Samson. Fearing an all-out genocide, the Turkish government launched an attack on Cyprus, taking over the northern third of the island. Even after Samson was ousted, however, Turkey refused to relinquish the north. In 1983, the Turks in northern Cyprus declared independence, finalizing the division of the island. Today, Turkish Cypriots blame the coup for destroying the united Cyprus, while Greeks cite the Turkish intervention. In reality, however, these events simply dealt the final blow to an already moribund state. Cyprus, after all, was founded on bicommunal principles, so when Archbishop Makarios sought to exclude the Turks from its governance, he cut the island off from a key aspect of its history, its culture, and its very identity. It was at that turning point that Cyprus became a divided island. For though Cyprus is split between two de facto states, the far deeper and more profound division is the one Makarios wrought, one of mistrust and hatred between two populations that once lived together fraternally. It's been 50 years since the guns fell silent on the island of Cyprus, and 50 years since the Archbishop was laid to rest, but the impacts of his actions still resonate across not only Cyprus, but the world as a whole. The Cypriot conflict drove a wedge between Greeks and Turks around the world, creating fault lines in the unity of NATO and the West, while driving Turkey ever closer to Russia and China. Whether things would have been different if Makarios had offered a way to include the Turks, rather than a proposal to push them away, we may never know. But because of one man's actions, because of his fateful decision, Greece and Turkey remain at arms, and Cyprus remains an island divided.